So to recap the previous session, Nicholas was still in Lincoln in around early June 1456, along with Cornelius, looking for support while they worked on deciphering a stolen Mercer parcel. Elined met with Rothschild and then with Robert, discussing the updates on the peace negotiations before setting off for Lincoln herself, in hopes of using her boon with Sir Hugh, requesting him to speak with Ambrose to break this tie and sue for peace with the anarchs. Meanwhile, Robert also met with his secret Yorkist conspiracy, who informed him the anarchs have aligned with them in an opportunity to strike at Ragna by way of assaulting the Lionsgate Chantry at Durham and unseating the regent, Yves Cavaignac, the current viceroy of Durham. They also pressured him about finding the Volknut, the pagan Danish symbol to herald the Einherjar and bring their vengeance upon Ragna. And as all this was going on, Judith fought for her own life north of Birmingham against riders who had followed her out. She managed to slay one and injure others, but after standing her ground long enough, she was eventually cut down. Judith, the last you remember in your battered state was the rending pain in your neck, down your spine, as the forged steel severed bone and flesh in your body went limp, vision going black. You spent a long period in this darkness, maybe weeks or longer. When you start to finally come out of this, and you start to hear familiar sounds, creaking planks of a ship at sea, the waves and the water of the ocean. You open your eyes, still grievously crippled and racked by the pain of your wounds, but now with 5 more vitae, feeling less starved. And you stare up at a starlit night sky as a figure retracts from you with a leather flask in their hand.
What state is she in? Like, is she chained or?
No, you feel only restrained by your wounds, which are still quite severe. You are still crippled. You could probably stand up very slowly and painfully, but you don't feel any restraints or weights. You think you're still wearing the ripped up clothing, the cloak and such that you had on. You don't feel the weight of your blade or any weapons on you.
Where am I?
The figure retracting from you with this flask, you can vaguely tell by the dim lighting around you, is a trim and well-dressed old man, looking at you with aged eyes.
Can I tell what kind of vitae I was just given?
It felt very rich, perhaps the richest you've ever tasted. Back then it was just a distant memory. You only just realized that you were taking something in as you came to.
She's very much trying to assess the situation she's in currently, trying to read her surroundings, the type of vessel she's in, smells. Obviously, she can't identify an exact location, but I wonder if the smell of the particular smell of the sea air might tell her which side of England she's on.
It's hard to say. The scent of the sea is a familiar one. The air is as warm as the breeze above deck ever gets. You think you're above deck on a cog. You can tell there are a couple lanterns hanging around providing some light, but most of the light is being provided by the moon. And spending more time to get your senses about you, this old man in front of you looks like he's maybe in his 60s at least, trim and dressed quite finely in dark doublet and hose. His eyes are sunken and heavy, with labored eyelids. He gives you some space as you start to get your bearings.
Does he bear any kind of heraldry at all?
No, none. But he does speak up as he sees you're a little bit more awake. Welcome back, Judith. How do you feel?
Like I've been ridden hard, put away wet, didn't get to enjoy it.
I would caution you against healing, recovering all that you have there. And he kind of gestures to you. You may find that what remains within you, you may have to ration.
You have me at a disadvantage, sir. You know my name. What may I call you?
He steps forward so that more of the nearby lantern light can catch his face. You have spent so long in search of me. It is overdue that we met. You may call me Basileus.
She'll extend a hand, obviously not in a threatening way, but kind of as means of greeting.
He takes his hand and helps you up from your position on the deck.
How cold is his hand?
It's tough to say because you are above deck. You can make a perception alertness roll, difficulty 7. You don't have to worry about your dice penalties for this since you're just feeling. Zero successes. It's cold, but not any colder than you would expect someone to have been above deck on a cog at sea to be. Sailors have had hands like these. Indeed. You and I have been battling for decades now. The valiant effort, I must say. House Chamberlain resisted long after many others of its size joined us. But you cannot keep it tied back forever, Judith.
Is this where you offer me position or dump me overboard?
We will arrive at that. point in this discussion soon enough, I think. I must say it was easier to find you than initially anticipated. He steps away to walk along what you realize is the starboard side of the ship. We thought you would go to ground insulated, but it seems you are your father's child, a merchant to the end. I can hardly criticize you for Birmingham. I recognize its future value all too well.
All things considered, it seemed a good enough place to find a fresh start.
He stops to turn to look at you, and he has a very serious look, but he seems to correct it with a faint smile. Fresh starts are rare for us. Very rare. I was afforded one once. Perhaps you'll be afforded one tonight. If it's any consolation, that fledgling, Mr. Shepherd, was not in a position to protect you from our inquiry, given the predicament he placed his family in. Blame should not be placed upon him.
It's very difficult to blame the lessers for the actions of those in power. I'd sooner blame a soldier for the decisions of a general.
You may not believe this, but I am all too aware of being subject to the whims of more powerful. I was in a position much like you are now, centuries ago. But let us dispense with the obvious. As you alluded to, you are not dead. I'd estimate you may guess pieces as to why that is.
I expect I have something you want.
You can go many places, reach many ears that most cannot. That has value to me. This war with the Covenant and the Anarchs must proceed, as must the conflict between the Yorkists and the Lancasters. You have value in this.
How much value, though, I wonder?
Well, that is to be decided. It is to be seen. You're resourceful. I've seen this. I would have you say what you must. Delay negotiations. Plot. Assassinate. Do what you must to ensure these conflicts resume. As he's saying this, he's walking along and his hand is gliding across the railing on the starboard side, looking out into the water, as though trying to fix his eyes on something.
I have a price.
He turns slowly, almost lazily, to look at you.
When the dust settled, I promised the anarchs Norwich.
tall promise. What made you think you could take it?
At the time, I had hoped reason would see Ambrose and the other princes clearly see the greater threat in their midst. But you've done well. No one trusts anyone. And thus, the old must be dealt with.
I think perhaps I am not as old as you suspect.
You misunderstand me, sir. I refer to the Covenant.
I know what you refer to. And yes, they are blinded by distrust, paranoia. They were even when I was younger than you now. They always have been. That is why their machinations will always end in ash. So long as they continue as they have been.
The role Anafnemtet played in that should not be undersold.
True, he was quite efficacious at his role. He played his part. And then he disappointed. Judith, do you fancy inventions?
Depends on their usefulness.
As a sailor and a merchant, I think you would find this most useful. And he reaches into his doublet and withdraws, looks like a metal tube, collapsible. It extends out. It's a very strange device, never seen anything like it. It has a glass cover at the large end. It kind of sticks out. A device for distant observation. We've been developing it, but have not distributed to the mortals in our employ yet. I would like you to try to use it. There is something I wish for you to see. I would like you to identify what is on the nearest cog, a mile off our starboard, if you may.
She'll hobble forward and take up the glass and see if she can sight in on the boat in question.
It's quite simple and intuitive to use, you find, and leaning against the railing for support, you look in the direction that he pointed, and you do see through this, it's almost like magic. You think at first perhaps it's some kind of power, some infusion, some gift of your kind, but it does seem quite mundane. You can see very far with this device, and the cog that was otherwise easily a mile out looks much closer. You can see another one behind it, 2 cogs in total, with the aid of the moonlight in this device. The nearest one bears the Chamberlain banner. This is one of your family's ships. The small light becomes visible top deck. You can just make out small figures walking across. And then you see it. The men are pouring out barrels of a black liquid all over the ship. And as they pour this out, they pass an African man stripped down entirely and bound by his hands, being led away to a rowboat. Kazim. You follow him until you see that the mast is tied up by almost a dozen men strapped to the mast, unable to move. I am less the fool Ambrose was in unleashing you back to your allies without sufficient leverage. And indeed there must be some payment for the loss of Damien.
You should have sent him with a bribe instead of a blade.
If you look closely, strapped to that mast are the Chamberlain men who refused to sign a writ of revocation, which would strip you of your claim to the Chamberlain enterprise. A surprising amount of loyalty among them. You should be proud they will die honorably. And as he says that, you cannot help but notice the growing blaze of light, the glow from the cog as it catches fire rapidly. The flames spread to the mast, the men tied up, squirming as the fire slowly crawls up them and their screams are silent at this distance. We have all we need from the surviving males to seize the Enterprise and incorporate it into the Mercer Company. After tonight, you will own the Chamberlain Enterprise only because we allow it. And Kazim will live only because we allow it. Let me say this in no unclear terms, Judith. You do not have a price. You work for the Mercers now. You work for me. Our fates are one, and if our plans fare poorly, you will fare poorly. And when you have nothing left to lose, we will see that your companions awaken to a ship, just as this one, just as you did. And then they will begin to lose things. He then climbs up to the starboard side railing and turns to you. For your sake, I hope we do not have to meet again, Judith.
You stripped me of everything. Save a name. Do you forget yet that I am persona non grata in London? Believed a traitor by every Covenant prince.
He withdraws a dagger and looks to you from the railing. Good luck. And he draws it across his own throat, leaning back with widening eyes and falling overboard with a splash in the ocean. Leaving you alone on this ship, the sight of the distant cog still blazing. What's going through Judith's mind now?
She's still not sure exactly where she is in relation to land or in relation to any landmarks. It's an interesting position to be in. Can land be seen at all?
When you look around in other directions, you do spot off the port side, in the distance, a number of miles out, an island.
Is there anyone else on board the ship?
You don't hear anyone.
What about the position of, well, can I use the stars to kind of identify roughly where I am?
Absolutely. Make an intelligence survival roll, standard difficulty. Alright, with one success, you are able to tell the basic direction of north, and the island is small enough that could be the Isle of Wight, putting you just in the channel, the English Channel between France and England. Sorry, was I muted?
No, I was pondering. What state are the sails in?
The sails seem fine. The ship overall looks to be in good condition. There are a couple small rowboats that have been brought on board. But you don't, even after limping around and looking around, there's no one else on deck. Everything about this ship is normal and fine except that the crew is entirely gone. Actually, scratch that. One of the rowboats is gone.
Are any of her other possessions on board ship at all? Or is it literally just her and her cloak and her clothes?
Your sword is gone. Your coins, your coin purse, which you threw at the mercenaries, is actually back on you. What else were you looking for?
That's pretty much it. Is the ship completely empty, or are there goods, whatnot, on board?
It does look like there's goods as in rations, there's cots that have been prepared. It looks as though it'd be ready for a crew and cargo to be put on it.
I'm guessing the boat the rowboat that Kazim was put onto didn't come this way.
No, you don't see a rowboat approaching you.
I thought you said something anyway.
Yes, it looks like he was walking in the direction or being led in the direction of a rowboat, but you didn't see it head your way.
If I were to estimate, well, I don't want to break loose a rowboat if I can avoid it, because ship's a ship, regardless of anything else. Would I be able to, in my current state, adjust the sails and steer into Portsmouth?
if you healed a little bit more, if you were no longer crippled and could move around a little bit more, you could conceivably do that. At least get the sails in order. It would take you a long time because normally this is done by a couple dozen people. But you think you could probably get it aimed in the right direction as far as stopping it or appropriately docking? That's a different question.
Yeah, docking she's not really terribly concerned about. That's what the skiffs are for. But she could get within rowing distance of land easily.
Yeah, you're basically working at 1/20th a regular cog cruise speed.
So she's going to set about the task of making her ship shape and taking her to land. The plan is going to be to steer in and try and stop the boat using the anchor, and just like gradually cutting sails and trimming sails until enough forward momentum has been lost that the anchor's not going to tear things apart.
Yeah, you can definitely try that. So your idea for the sails is to literally cut into them so they won't have as much forward.
No, it's a sailing term.
Okay.
So trimming sails basically means just reducing the amount of sail being used at any given time. So as we come around the Isle of Wight, trim the sails enough that the forward momentum can be maintained without being built upon by the wind, and kind of coast, and using the natural drag of the water to kind of reduce that speed enough that when the anchor is finally dropped, it just gradually drags to a slow stop instead of like screeching to a halt and ripping the boat apart.
Yeah, that is a real threat. So you can definitely try all of this. It all makes sense in your mind. The only thing that comes to your mind, Judith, is that normally the speed at which the things that must happen on this ship for all of this to go smoothly is going to be much harder.
Right, that's why you start doing it gradually, piece by piece, further out. So instead of trimming the sails all at once, minor adjustments over time.
I will say that's going to slow your approach to the island considerably, because I'm kind of imagining you like almost like not having a break, but just letting letting nature help slow you down, which means never getting up to a very high speed, so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm imagining there's enough time in the night left so that at least she can get near shore, even if she doesn't have time to get ashore tonight.
Yeah, it depends on how you do it. You could definitely, with a regular crew, you could get to that island in a couple hours. If you do it the slow and steady way, you could probably get maybe half to 3/4 of the way from a night. You also know that you could just set it to full sail ahead with the understanding that you're gonna either capsize or lose the ship on approach.
She's kind of actually trying to retain the ship. Because if it's fully stocked for a crew, there's no reason not to make use of that.
Yeah. You don't think that you can make it tonight on your own if you play it slow and steady.
And I worry about being adrift in the middle of the day. What if I pulled hard to port and came in parallel to the Solent?
To Studland?
The Solent, the mouth of the Solent River. And pulling parallel to the land. That way there's plenty of room for the ship to slow itself down. And there's the countercurrent of the river pushing against it to slow it further, so I'd have more time. It would be easier to reduce velocity.
I'm not seeing the river you're talking about.
It's the north side of the Isle of Wight. That's the Solent River.
Oh, okay. Northern Isle of Wight. I don't think I understand what you're trying to go for yet. Let me look at this map again.
Basically, instead of trying to pull in at Portsmouth, I'd be heading north towards Southampton, using the river's natural current to slow the vessel.
As an idea,
that way I'm not relying just on the drag of the water, so I can make better time, but with no one manning the oars, it's not going to get very far upstream. Yeah.
In theory, it could work. In practice, I mean, in theory, many ideas.
Communism works.
Yeah, right. A lot of ideas work in theory. In practice, is a lot trickier.
Basically, all I really need is for the vessel to be slowed enough by the river that when I do weigh anchor, I still have a boat left. If it doesn't work, I can always abandon ship and swim ashore that way, but I'd rather have a boat left.
Yeah, I think I understand the idea. The idea is sound, it's just the actual execution.
Ain't nothing else for it. We're gonna try this.
Alright, so for all the physical labors of crewing this ship on your own, you will take all of your dice penalties from your wounds. And so to begin, I'm going to have you just roll. We never actually got an official sailing skill in. I think I had you use leadership for that as kind of the as a stand-in.
There's a lot of things that go into it.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So even though you're not actually captaining a ship, that still doubles as your knowledge of ships and how to run them. So I'm going to have you make use of the same dice pool.
Do you want me to do dexterity leadership, or do you want me to use manipulation leadership to reflect the original dice? Like, it's the same number of dice. But...
I'm going to have you actually go... Yeah, either strength or dexterity. For the first attempt, for just getting the sails up and getting this ship basically pointing in the right direction, I'll take a strength, and I don't know what we'd call this in place of it. Sailing. Your strength and sailing.
What are we calling the sailing skill?
Leadership.
Okay.
Leadership will double for your sailing.
I was confused because I super don't have a sailing skill.
Yeah. Failure as a storyteller to begin this game. No military theory, no sailing.
Difficulty 6. It's fairly standard actions, just a lot of them.
So that's where this is going to get interesting, because you know you have some amount of time in the night. You're not exactly sure how much. You could probably guess more than less of the night is remaining. If you want to get to shore with a ship intact, the speed at which you do all of this matters a lot more. If you just want to do it slowly and do it right, it'll matter a lot less. So what is Judith's plan right now?
She would like to be in a place where she can recover the ship, well, where she can anchor the ship, come back to it in one piece, and still have time to get ashore, and ideally find someone to feed from. Okay.
And you know that's going to be a tall order, because if this ship gets in sight of English authorities, it could just be, boarded and searched for, dead sailors, pirates. If somebody catches wind that there's just a ghost ship out here, they're not going to leave it alone if it gets close enough to be seen. I'm just giving that to you. I'm not needing you to give a roll so that you're not surprised if that happens.
Fair enough.
Because ships are very expensive. They are investments. No one's going to leave a perfectly good ship just hanging out.
So, I'm hearing diff 8.
If you want to we're going to go with difficulty 8 for this. Include your dice penalties, which are -5 unless you healed one?
I did.
Okay, then you're at -2. Two successes. Alright, in a flurry of activity, you're so far keeping good pace. Can describe Judith as she one-man crews this ship into place.
So, Judith is doing her best to mind the lines as much as minding the sails themselves, swinging the jib around to take full advantage of the wind before she runs back aft to take the wheel and haul hard port around the point of the Isle of Wight. At which point she has to run back out to wing the jib around again so that the sails stay full. As she rounds the end of the island, she'll begin trimming sail. It's not a very long way before she enters the mouth of the Southampton waters. And it's going to take all of that time to trim speed before she weighs anchor.
Alright, so there's going to be a couple more rolls. You're not out of the woods yet. So for trimming the sails, if I'm understanding that, that's going to be a lot more of an agile and nimble task than it is. I'm sure strength's going to be involved, but being quick with your hands is going to be really important here. So to slow this ship down enough so that's safe to anchor, I'll take a dexterity and sailing, also difficulty 8. So far, you're doing well.
Can I get a lightning reflexes on that?
Yes, you may. So 2 successes, still going well. Everything it's almost like you have an appropriate, maybe a skeleton crew, but you're doing the work of a skeleton crew on your own right now. So you're going to slow this thing down pretty well. The last part you need to get into place, if I'm understanding this, is you want to drop anchor while you kind of parallel drift into the river.
Imagine it like letting a car drift to a stop and then pulling the e-brake to make sure it stays where it's at, but the car is still going to be rolling at the same time.
Alright, and yeah, we'll take a strength sailing to finish this, and that will put you, if you're getting into the Solent, just at the mouth of the Solent. So strength sailing, difficulty 8. This will be the last roll you need to get this ship safely anchored at the mouth of the Solent.
So what you're saying is it'd be a bad idea to pull right up to Southampton?
Oh, you wanted to pull up to
a populous village place where I might have a better chance at hunting?
Are you going to try and time it so you drift all the way up the river and then stop?
Maybe not directly up, but within... I want to be within comfortable rowing range.
I see. Okay. So you won't be officially docked or anything, obviously,
right,
but you'll be close enough that you could rowboat out, and then hopefully no one does anything to this during the day.
Hire a crew and come back out.
Okay, and so far you're succeeding, your timing is doing okay. This has been a number of hours of work, you running around, but surprisingly, you're managing it right now. So yes, one last roll to get your ship within reasonable range to rowboat up to Southampton. Still difficulty 8.
This was strength?
Yes.
So I screwed up on that first strength roll, and it should have been 6 at 8 instead of 5 at 8. And I forgot about potence.
Oh, don't forget about it now.
I just didn't want you to wonder, why are you rolling 6 dice this time instead of 5?
Two successes. You managed to hold it together. Your ship would be a very strange sight to anyone else watching someone tirelessly run all over their ship as they single-handedly bring this cog to a slow and steady descent in speed until you manage to drop anchor on your own and heave this over, and you can hear the creaking in this ship. It's a strain on the ship, but it's not going to be damaged. It's certainly not going to, damage the ship significantly. And it starts to tip just a little bit because you don't have the perfect grace you would with a full crew. But after everything, you get this ship anchored in the Solent River, maybe a mile from the Southampton port. You can see the distant lights from the town there.
She'll snap back at the ship itself. Quit your bellyaching, you old whore. And go to set the one of the longboats down in the water.
Alright, no roll required. That's simple enough to be done. Just a matter of time.
And then she's going to row herself ashore and see about finding a bite.
Alright. After successfully anchoring your ship, you lower your rowboat, and the scene fades on Judith making her way into town to find a meal and a crew.
Several meals.
Alright. Well done. Didn't expect that.
You gave me a whole ass ship. What was I gonna do?
Alright. Transition and go back in time. How much time? Who knows? We're going to check in with Nicholas Ridley. Nicholas, for you, it is still early June 1456. You are in Lincoln. You've arrived with Cornelius. Look over my notes. Alright. So he departed from you in search of talking to his own contacts. He set you both up with a couple rooms at an inn. What are Nicholas's immediate plans and thoughts?
I think when we last left him off, he was in the middle of something. But I can't quite remember what that was.
Let's see. You were working on decrypting this letter. You and Cornelius realized that it was an actively changing letter, or rather the encryption was changing. And I'm not sure what Nicholas's next plan was for this or otherwise.
I'm trying to remember myself.
If anyone else remembers more details than that, please speak up, for sure. But that was my last note.
And then I think he went for a walk around the city or something. And I thought he got into trouble somewhere.
That does sound familiar. I remember he visited the hospital.
That's
pretending
right.
To be a physician.
Yes, okay, so that's where we left off.
Yeah. Did you get a willpower back for that?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's what I meant to do. Okay. So yes, you see that the sisters servicing this hospital in the dead of night are seen to quietly preparing to address the body, as it's no surprise this man died. He wasn't expected to last the night. You're even thanked for your role in providing assurance and confidence and giving him the attention he deserved at his last moments. And so in a good enough time, he is carried out. There are still plenty of sick there, of course, who seem a bit more morose for the sight of it. What else are Nicholas's plans for this night or going forward?
This was just a way for him to clear his mind, and now that it's done, he will quietly depart, not caring what they think about their new physician arriving and leaving in the dead of night. After this, he will wait for Cornelius to return if he intends to.
He gave you the impression it might be a couple nights of finding contacts, talking with them, and then coming back in. So you might have a couple nights to do as you may, unless you wish to just find out what he comes back with in a couple nights.
Yeah, I'd likely wait for that.
Okay.
Translating on its own is getting me nowhere, because the damn message keeps changing.
It is very difficult.
It's possible that Cornelius would even come back to find him in a sort of fugue. So rattled by his failure that he can do nothing but pace the halls, muttering to himself.
Not to take advantage of your roleplay, but I'm going to take advantage of it and have you make a willpower roll to see if your derangement does show its face under this increased stress. The imperfection, the pieces that won't go together the way they should. Difficulty 6. Four successes. You're able to compartmentalize enough to not let this bother you too much. You only do a little bit of pacing. And that is the sight that he does come back to, although you do have your wits about you.
He certainly looks haunted.
You look a bit worse for wear. You close the door behind him, kind of shaking some of the cool off.
And he is pacing with his hands behind his back, but he stops to look at Cornelius. It's this damned message. It's pervading my thoughts.
No success then. Unfortunate. Scarcely been a year since my lord was slain. Already much has changed here. My contacts have bought out the exclusive retention of Prince Everly. I'll find no more allies here, save perhaps the good bishop.
Your allies with the bishop?
Oh. In so many words. Sir Hugh has been honorable and decent, a rarity among our kind. I served my master, Jean-Marc, almost 2 centuries. It never ceased to astound me how Cainites can be such contradictory creatures, stagnant and dynamic at the same time. Some fruits taking decades to mature and others being plucked in mere nights. That damned Everly.
Do I have a way of knowing that he is new to the blood? He was just recently turned, right? I mean, he did make a misstep by saying "you are kind" just a moment ago.
Yes, it was definitely a slip of the tongue. You can make a perception empathy roll. Not so much about detecting any change in supernatural, but the psychology behind it.
Difficulty?
Difficulty 6, since he just slipped up. Two. I feel like you should have a specialty somewhere applicable in there.
Perception is intuitive.
Yes, I'll give you that. So 3 successes. It definitely seems odd that the way he described the Canaanites, and he hasn't outright said it, but you have a strong suspicion he's not very old to the blood.
It must have been torment for you. Waiting so long, I mean. Acting as his errand boy for 200 years. Why wouldn't he give you the blood sooner, Cornelius?
On the contrary, I liked my station. My existence made sense. I could enjoy all the things I ever had. I had a master I loved, whom I would gladly die for.
Did he love you? Or was he just a useful tool?
Looking back, perhaps I was just a tool to him. Though, I cannot say I fault him even for that. I never wanted this.
Are you certain?
Never did I request it. For after the time I spent serving him, I learned something changes in Canaanites. It is as though all fortune turns to spoil. Every friendship is an opportunity. You can only exist from effectively preying upon others, in every sense.
Spoken like one who was not raised in the nobility. I think you would find that they are much like we. Every bit the parasite. You must wonder why I'm bringing this up.
He's looking down in thought at your words and then looks up at your question. I fancy you have a few thoughts on it yourself.
Have you ever considered being your own man? Your master is dead. You don't have to follow in his footsteps.
I do not. I choose to hunt that which slew him. That is my purpose now.
The dead are the dead, Cornelius, and you are so talented. You're wasting yourself on revenge.
Perhaps I am. But perhaps I'm not. I cannot say until this deed is done if that is true or not. Unfortunately, I will have all eternity to ponder it.
You could instead be traveling the world. You could see Paris. I hear the Canaanites of Paris are something to behold.
I have met some. They are less than you would think. It is as though their worldliness only exacerbates their ennui. The more they see, the less there is to see. They turn to their tricks. They use people as puppets and objects. I have been to their courts, alongside my master. It is not a place I wish to return.
Then what about places further? Araby, for instance. Have you ever laid eyes upon Araby?
I cannot say that I have. Perhaps when all of this is settled, I will consider such fancies, such ideas. At the time, I must remain focused. I am now the head of this group. Merchants of the staple. I cannot leave it, let it squander.
And why not? Other merchant houses will rise in its place.
I feel to
Why
do
obligate
so.
yourself?
I feel to do so would be a disgrace to Jean-Marc, to all he did for me.
He's dead, Cornelius.
But his memory is alive.
That is a foolish fancy.
The results of his deeds live in me and others. What he has touched, what he has impacted, that is very real.
And how did he accomplish this? By moving behind the backs of his compatriots. They had no idea what he was up to. I only say these things because I care about you, Cornelius. And yes, he is lying through his teeth if you need to roll for that.
Yeah, I was about to ask about it too. Manipulation. I'll take empathy or subterfuge. I'll go subterfuge.
Alright, I do have the devious specialty.
Absolutely.
Seems I use it more and more. Difficulty?
Standard. Be contested.
Oh, just 2.
He looks at you curiously, his eyes narrowing a bit. And why do you care about me? Tell me again.
Because I know you have a larger part to play. Perhaps not now, but later. Or have you forgotten the blood that binds me? There are things in motion now that cannot be undone. I fear you might be in danger.
Most likely. I imagine the Mercers very much would like to end the life of the head of the stables. All the better to consume it.
And so much more, I think. Their ambitions go far beyond the merchants of the staple.
Would you claim to know much of those ambitions? And it turns to look at you from an angle.
I have not been entirely honest with you. I came here out of a morbid curiosity. And then, to my chagrin, I discovered that I like you. It's not something I can say of many.
What morbid curiosity is that?
The Mercers want you dead, Cornelius. That much is true. And they wanted me to deliver the blow. I did not know until now who it was that was asking, but I've pieced together many different pieces of this puzzle. Shall I tell you more? Would you believe anything I said?
You have had opportunity to strike me down yet. It has not happened.
I fear there is a great conspiracy festering at the heart of our kingdom.
Of that there is no doubt, and you an agent in their employ. Clearly.
I'm an agent only for myself.
And you can tell that Cornelius has been resting his hand on a dagger blade for the latter half of this conversation. Not to withdraw it, but certainly ready now. I admit these things to me.
I myself am not certain. Because I think perhaps that as true compatriots we can get to the heart of this. Why it is that the Mercers would want the war between the anarchs and the Covenant to continue. What do they have to gain?
So it is but another puzzle to you.
And if it is, enigmas are the only thing that titillate me these nights. If you weren't an enigma yourself, you're right, I could have struck you down at any time. You would have not a chance of seeing me coming.
Young may I be under the night, but do not mistake, I am no weakling. You may find a more difficult foe than you may have anticipated.
Don't be naive. I wouldn't come at you with a blade in the dark. My methods are far more insidious.
That does little to endear me to your idea of continuing to work with you to uncover the Mercers.
Is it not what John Mark would have wanted? And you say you're not going to put aside his wishes. I had to test you, of course.
Make a manipulation empathy roll, difficulty 8. Two successes. He's very grim and serious, looking at you with his head lowered, as though almost half in a combat stance already. But he seems to loosen up. Very well. For now we are allies, while we find the truth to this. But know that I will watch you.
Something has just come to my mind which is even more ghoulish. What if it was the Mercers who arranged for your sire's death?
What know you of the details of his death?
Not much, I'm afraid, only what I've heard second-hand from the Gauntlet. And they are not remarkably forthcoming with their secrets.
I was able to uncover much of those details. It is not only the Gauntlet which knew of this. My sire, along with his retinue and his greatest warrior, Reynaldry, were all slain by something, or perhaps many somethings, capable of rending steel and splintering shield, of bending blade. I know not what monstrosity the mercers could have in their employ, but to bring such a rancorous beast, or a roving band of mercenaries from some highland distant, would certainly go noticed. I think if the mercers truly had a hand in this, it was either a very distant hand, or not at all.
You do not give enough credit to an organization whose resources are limitless. I think these letters I found are only what I read in a book once is the proverbial tip of the iceberg.
Then perhaps we shall redouble our efforts to uncover the last of them. It seems my contacts will be no good here.
For now, you have my word that I do not wish to see you harmed.
Of what value that word will be, we will see. But know that I will always have a hand on my blade.
I would expect nothing less.
He nods. This last parcel. It changes this encryption. There are two I would consider going to for such sorcery. Octavia of Canterbury is known to be quite wise, to be able to see that which cannot be seen. You have met her by now, I imagine.
I have, and she frightened even me, though she would never know it.
She does have a queer sort about her, and for as long as I have been here, I have heard ghastly rumors. But it cannot be denied. The eldest of the Covenant princes would have some way of piercing this. Else, I may venture into Norwick. I would ask of Sebastian's words on this. I cannot...
Nicholas is a bit taken aback when that name is mentioned.
I cannot claim friendship with either. The best I can claim is to have stood at my sire's side. They will know my identity, and likely my allegiance.
If my opinion means anything, I think it is Octavia we should see.
You think against seeing Sebastian?
I have my reasons.
In the vein of uncovering all of these shadows, bringing light, will you not tell me those reasons?
Not yet, I think. There are things going on behind the scenes. The rest of the gauntlet is hard at work. I do not wish to undermine their success.
As you say.
For make no mistake, I do consider them friends as well.
Let us hope that they do not make the mistake of considering you theirs.
Your words bite, but I will let that pass. Shall we prepare for travel?
Indeed. Unless you
And
think of a different option.
And have you ever been to Canterbury?
Yes. In point of fact, I have a manor there. I spent some time watching the affairs of the hunters. Those who dragged away the Mercer envoy.
Have you been there as you are now?
I have. It is a burden, yes.
So long as you're prepared for it.
He nods. It grows more tedious the longer I am there. I think perhaps purchasing a manor was a mistake, but perhaps we shall not require much time.
I will be ready by tomorrow evening.
He nods and starts to walk past you to his room, giving you a wide berth.
Nicholas stands deathly still.
Right. He disappears around a corner. You hear a door open and shut. Is there anything else Nicholas plans to do during his stay in Lincoln?
Nope. He's laid his cards on the table.
He has. For now, they seem to be playing out. The scene will fade on Nicholas watching Cornelius depart. And we're still at early mid-June 1456. Elined, you came to Lincoln, but I want to say that wasn't until later.
Mid-June, I wrote it down.
Thank you. That's what I thought as well. So you will be missing Nicholas. And Robert... Let me review my notes. So I keep track of you. Like little ants all over the place. You are, or at least were, in York. And that, I believe, was also around mid-June. Remind me what Robert's plans were.
He is going to find the Chamberlain of Ragna and speak with him.
That's right.
After that, he's going to attempt to negotiate peace with Ragna and the anarchs and try to figure out the safest way to secure passage further north to speak with another faction.
Okay. So we're gonna pause here. We're half an hour to the break. I have to use the restroom. So we will come back to this in 15 minutes and pick it up again. Let's be back in 15. All right. Meanwhile, back in York, Robert, you went in search of Ethan Sharp, the Chamberlain to Ragna. It's not difficult to get an audience with him. You return to the castle, and after maybe less than an hour, of inquiring. You're standing in the throne room of the Great Hall. There are maybe 8 guards in total, kind of 2 at every entrance, and you hear the familiar clack of shoes on fine polished stone tile, and you see that it does appear that Ethan Sharp is here, alone. And so he walks in. He kind of runs his hand through his long, silvery gray hair, which goes down to his shoulder. Ah. Octavia, what can I do for you?
What can you do indeed? Good evening. How have the nights been?
Well, quite busy, as you can imagine. But not too busy that I might not accommodate a need for such a honored guest as yourself. Do not believe Lady Dorothy has been here very recently.
Ah, you've not seen her lately.
Oh, I simply meant in case you were happening to inquire about the Lady Nicole Gay.
Not simply that. I am more interested in business.
Very good, sir. What kind of business may I help you with?
What kind of business ventures are you willing to take forth?
You said take full?
Yes. Take forth.
Well, on behalf of Lady Ragna, I can say we are always looking for new trading partners. The import of good wool, good English wool at a fair price.
Yes, seeking such contracts is the difficult part with the worshipful mercers. Have they grieved you much?
Well, here and there, yes. But, perhaps I might be able to provide more specific answers if I was aware of what you're interested in, Octavia.
Lord de Vere will mention some of the contracts he's held that he's been unable to, if it's appropriate, if there's like still a way to access them, that he would dangle and try to discern what Ragna's current status is in her financial condition. If she's struggling or not.
Unfortunately, without Francois de Masson to help you understand your own estate, you don't really know where your money's tied up. You know
He has worked on it before himself.
Then I will let you make a difficult check on that, because you are still spread too thin as a flaw. So give me an intelligence and seneschal roll
Seneschal?
Yes. Management of estate affairs.
Can I argue commerce?
Some of your investments and money might be in commerce. I will let you make a roll through commerce. It's not going to be the whole picture of your portfolio. You'll get some information. And intelligence, commerce roll, difficulty 8. One success. Alright, so as far as the trading investments go, I'm going to say that you do remember working on part of your estate with Francois, and he kind of explained that there's at least some of your money is tied up into a kind of trading investment where you've paid for a crew to do imports and exports regularly, and so because you funded them, you always get a cut, and you have protections against pirates, so you kind of have like insurance policies. So you could withdraw money from that investment, or otherwise sublease this trading ship. Basically loan out these traders and this ship out.
Mm-hmm.
Which means you wouldn't make money, but others could see it as a major boon.
Yeah, that is what he will use as bait then. That seems appropriate.
Okay. That is quite an offer, Octavia. May I ask what the interest in all this is at a particular time? Trading isn't very profitable at this moment. It's difficult trades, with tension in the air.
You say difficult. How much so has it become?
Well, fortunately, it has started to rebound with the pace. If it prolongs, we might start to see the prices start to go up again, but the further the conflicts go on, the more military is required to intervene. Pirates flourish, trade suffers. No one's buying product because no one can move it. No one's selling it because it keeps getting lost. And so, prices are quite low. It has, between you and me, sir, and I say this only because you are an esteemed honored guest, it has made some financial affairs here a bit more strained than usual. He nods a couple times.
Understandable.
I should not speak so plainly about the affairs of our war funds. However, I am sure that your intentions are well enough.
And certainly there should be a boon in this matter.
It would indeed help with relieving some of the trade pressures we have been with trying to move some of the wool imports. Much of Yorkshire's income is from shepherding.
How much do you speak of finances with Ragna?
Well, I should say quite thoroughly so. She does put me in the lion's share of handling most of it, which has been a bit taxing as of late. Excuse the pun there.
Well, yes. I am interested in proceeding further, but I would like to let Ragna know the condition of what this offer entails.
Ah, indeed. Well, for investment of this size, I think it only appropriate that you do speak with her. She entrusts me to the mortal affairs, of course. However, if individuals as esteemed as yourself are involved, she should be involved in this discussion.
Wonderful. Do let me know when she is free and unoccupied.
You happen to have come at a good time this night, sir. I happen to know she has finished with her latest meal. If you are so inclined to speak tonight, I imagine she would be open to the idea.
This sounds like perfect timing. Very well, let us proceed.
He nods and offers a weak smile, maybe a faint sense of relief on him. You're led further into the castle, up to the higher levels that you rarely see except through the eyes of servants. And you make your way into a salon on the far side of the castle. You're made to wait briefly before Ethan Sharp leads you in. And inside you see that it is quite ostentatious. There are large glass windows that look out onto the city. It's an impressive view of all of York. The inside is very well decorated. I think there are maybe a small fortune in this room. And you see Ragna near the center. She has on a long and dark gray evening gown on, and as you enter, passing through this cloth screen, you pass by two somewhat weak-looking gentlemen, weak in that they seem pale and unsteady on their feet, leaning against the walls as they walk past you, and they seem to be dressed in long pants, but they have open cotton shirts. She's currently lounging back in a daybed. She faces you, but seems not to give you any acknowledgement immediately. And almost as soon as you enter, Ethan himself departs, leaving you alone with her.
Robert will approach with a pleasant smile. And good evening, my prince.
You have fine timing. I am told you have an interesting proposition to make.
I think it would be of interest. I trust you've heard the details from Mr. Sharp.
He told me you had a surprising offer. One that was worth my hearing, but comes at a strange time. What draws this idea? What inspires you now, Lord of You?
First, I would hear where you stand on the issue of the anarchs.
Where I have always stood, as a firm believer that order will triumph over chaos. These rebels have had small victories here and there, but like embers will eventually die out, alone and scattered. I need only turn the attention of my heel to stamp them out.
But why
Go ahead.
But why strain resources trying to catch something elusive when it could be dealt with in a much more profitable manner?
I strain no great resources, I assure you. They have posed little problem to the Duke or Yorkshire, perhaps because they know better than to draw my anger. Barbaros may be played the fool, losing his ships and such. I will suffer no such indignity. And thus I expend nothing to address them yet. But tell me, what is your idea anyway? I am curious.
Merely to offer you the full service of a trading ship. A sublease, if you will.
And how does this profit off of the anarchs' plight?
Have you heard of the name Basileus?
I have. It was brought up in a council meeting. Some shadowy figure behind this Mercer company, which Elined indeed thought was also worth dealing with. And I will tell you the same as I told her. This Basileus has yet to expressly interfere with my affairs, and thus I yet see no benefit in engaging him either.
Yes. And that makes sense, since the two of you facing each other and expending resources, I speak of Barbaros, of course, is exactly what Basileus would have as being ideal.
Then perhaps we have the same idea of what ideal is. Is that so sinful?
I suppose not when one seeks similar goals. But surely you can see benefit in keeping things as they are, order prevailing over chaos. Too much turmoil and the whole order can be disrupted.
Indeed. And if Basileus threatens my order, then I will turn the attention of York against him. But until that night. She lets that hang as she crosses her legs and gets into a more comfortable position on this daybed.
I'd rather prevent that situation even happening. Would you not?
Lord de Vere, you will learn with age that there are 1,000 contingencies which you might prepare for. But with limited resources, you may select only a few.
I am offering to expand those resources. All I seek is just a change in vote.
She smiles lightly. You wish to bribe me into war? Or into peace? For it seems you wish for my conflict against Basileus at the expense of ending conflict with the anarchs.
I seek a strained peace, which is much more beneficial than war. This does not mean this peace would last, but until elements are dealt with, yes. And I do believe it is the greater good for the Order.
The anarchs have not, as of yet, deigned to cause problems in Yorkshire or for my affairs. However, to extend peace to them would legitimize their claims, their threats. I would not put them in such a position, nor credit them such power.
Understandable. It would seem as weakness. As you've said, they cause you no problems. But giving them legitimacy could be a problem in itself, yes.
Very wise. And thus you see, while your offer is tempting, it will be much more costly than your trading route may pay for. If the anarchs decide, in their foolishness, to begin conflict in Yorkshire, the response will be swift and violent.
Would that not leave you open to attack? Especially if they put a better fight than you could plan for.
These are the intricacies of warfare, which I am not a stranger to.
And certainly you've considered it.
She nods very lightly.
Do you remain unconvinced of the threat Basileus poses?
Of his threat to the Covenant, or perhaps to Barbaros or Ambrose, I am convinced, but of his threat to me, I am unconvinced. Certainly, he must be potent if he is behind this Mercer group. However, until it is made clear that he wishes conflict and interference with my domain, then I will not pursue quarrel with him.
Do you believe to reason with him?
I believe that great predators may stay their distance without destroying one another.
Isn't that much of a gamble without knowing much of the great predator?
I have known enemies, and of those known enemies, I must make calculations based on what I have, not on what I may have, or may lose, which is what I would face if I went to pursue a second conflict with this Basileus. I do not believe Barbaros would throw down arms, nor do I expect he would believe that I would.
Could you repeat that last part?
And she said that she also doesn't believe that Barbaros would believe that she would throw down arms.
Ah. And what if Barbaros does?
Believe me, after all that has happened. Then I would have been surprised by something for the first time in many years.
I do not speak of a resolution to your conflict by peaceful manners, but certainly a time to ease tension.
Barbaros has crossed the side which the anarchs deign not to. He has open conflict with me, even if now the Lancasters and Yorkers are at peace. That will not last, and we both know that. But Barbaros also knows that he cannot win this. I will make an example of him to the anarchs, such that they do not deign to interfere.
Pragmatic. Perhaps terms can be adjusted. What would you actually seek to give a vote of peace?
To agree with peace with the anarchs.
Yes. I only go so far because I truly believe this is the greater threat.
I imagine my price would be beyond their reach. To the extent that I cannot fathom it now. They rebelled against the whole of the Covenant, including myself. And at this time I see only a rat in the anarchs, a weak rodent, which deems to insult but dare not step where a predator could snatch it. To agree to peace with such a pathetic thing, I see no end for this, nor do I expect such a pathetic creature could offer me a sum enough for me to give it free passage. But should you be surprised and hear of an offer by them, I would entertain it. It would amuse me, if nothing else.
Yet even you cannot think of what that offer would be. Amusing, as you say.
If they brought me Barbaros's fangs, perhaps then. And she smiles to herself. Or perhaps
As is
Margaret's head.
a character. I'm trying to recall who Margaret is. I'm not sure who that is.
Margaret of Anjou is the kind of de facto Lancaster head, the wife of King Henry VI. She effectively rules this collective of nobles that manipulate King Henry. And you know this because you've looked into the politics behind it before.
How possible would it be to get the anarchs to deliver such a thing?
To deliver Barbaros's fangs or Margaret's head?
Margaret's head, yes. Does Robert at least have a feel of where she resides, what kind of security she has, things of that nature?
I don't know what I'd have you roll for this. It's one of those really outlandish ideas. I will take an intelligence, I suppose investigation, for lack of a better knowledge of what would be required to decapitate the wife of the queen. Wife of the king, rather.
Mm-hmm. Difficulty?
Standard. Just to give you a baseline. Zero successes, so you know it would take a lot. You don't know what, but the Queen of England is probably one of the most protected people in the British Isles. Maybe Europe. As far as the Kine are concerned, at least. You have no idea what will go into taking that.
Thinking back to the witch hunters, did they only know about the kindred presence in Norwick, or did they know of other places?
Your question was, did they only know of the Canaanites in Norwick?
Mm-hmm.
You heard Cornelius's reports from his contacts in Canterbury, so they effectively got everything they needed from the hunters. Which means you would know that they would know that if the Mercers are infiltrated by the Canaanites, then London almost certainly, and given that most of Patrick McNally's buildings were burned down the following night, they're probably in York. So you know that the hunters know that Canaanites are in multiple major cities. If that answers your question.
That may. Robert may present another offer. Well, what do you know of the hunter presence in our lands?
That it is small and disorganized, but dangerous enough not to test the waters a second time. I think we all learned a valuable lesson a century ago of what happens when you are indiscreet. Many neonates burned for that.
This indiscretion, was it attempts to manipulate them?
It was nothing short of a usurper flying above London and destroying the Prince of London in full view of the Tower and all of its forces, followed by some of the bloodiest nights that the British Isles have seen. That story spread very far and lasted many years.
That is what drew their eyes. I have come in contact with them. I do wonder how devastating they would be if they came upon a trail of breadcrumbs that led to one's foe.
She smirks again. You seek to wield them like a spear, and lead them to whom?
Barbaros, of course.
A tempting idea, one I had considered. However, the danger inherent to wielding such a weapon is to invite unnecessary danger. Barbaros is certain to face defeat. I need not add unnecessary risk for what would certainly be a very lively hunt. It would draw a great deal of negative attention to me by inviting hunters to any Canaanite's doorstep. For as much as I hate Barbaros, I would not condemn our race to further hunts, for if they were validated in Chester, they may be validated in London or York. Best to leave that alone, I think.
So you do have limits in your rage against Barbaros.
To the extent that I would destroy him and ensure my own destruction and everyone else's. Yes, I do have my limits, Lord Octavia.
But yet you do not think the same of Basileus. Curious.
I would not wield a weapon like that against Basileus either. Nor do I see him as the same existential threat the hunters pose to us.
Aha.
Basileus likely has his own agendas and goals, which do not involve the use of the hunters to exterminate his enemies. And thus, as long as we all agree that we do not wish to destroy ourselves in the process, the one thing I may trust in this jihad is that none of us are ready to meet the sun.
Well, it is unfortunate that neither of you seem reasonably willing to throw down arms. I've spoken with the two of you, and you both seem very confident in your victories.
And yet one of us must lose in the end. I hope you have not forgotten of the debt yet to be paid.
I have not. Do you seek to invoke it now?
No, I simply wish to remind you, as we speak of such things, that it is on my mind often. I regret that I am so immovable as Barbaros. Perhaps that alone we share. If you have any other concerns, Lord Octavia, please do feel free to bring them up. But I must retire for the evening. And with that, she starts to raise herself up.
No, nothing more. Robert will begin to leave.
Alright. It's your turn for Prince Ragna. What are Robert's plans next as he leaves and presumably leaves the castle.
He'll probably seek a way to get up to the Danes. And perhaps he'll see if there's any merchants that have traveled up there. Curious.
You don't have to decide right this second. I just want to know which way you were leaning.
That is the way he is leaning because he has had little luck with Ragna and Barbaros. This battle will go through, and with what he knows, the anarchs will attack the chantry. And war will continue at this pace. So it is in his interest to put an end to either Barbaros or Ragna, as they are both immovable. And he sees the most potential being to put an end to Ragna with information he could provide at the potential cost of his own life.
Alright. Makes sense to me. For now, we're going to depart as Robert leaves with these thoughts, these two immovable princes. Elined, you arrived in Lincoln in mid-June 1456, and you already spoke with Sir Hugh, calling upon your favor, requesting him to speak with Ambrose of London and change his vote in favor of peace with the anarchs. What are her next plans now?
Sorry, I forgot I was muted.
Whoops.
Her plans, actually, were to inform Judith of the situation.
Alright, so you're going to be returning to Birmingham?
I
Okay. So you travel back up to Birmingham, which is not a trivial trip. Let's see here. It's not the longest trip either. It's about 90 miles. So, like a week. Yeah, we'll say a week. Bringing you still mid to late June 1456. You return to Birmingham, and you, after spending a few nights in the inn, you're not seeing her. You're not finding her in her usual spot in the place you found her in the past. Seems to be missing. And does Elined wear her gauntlet ring when she's out and about?
Yeah, that she would.
Okay.
She would, since Judith isn't there, try to find the neonate they were using as an informant.
The neonate is not to be found either. Now, I know what could happen, but I think Creepy has another idea. Did you already have a plan in place?
Not in place, no. And I don't know whether or not the time frame would affect it. My plan was to send a rider from Southampton to meet with her
I see.
under Dominate.
Okay. So we'll come back to that. But at the present, in mid-late June 1456, you're not seeing Judith, and you're not seeing this neonate that you found before, you spoke to in the barn, the stable. But after a few nights of no success, you are approached by someone. As you're leaving the inn, again unsuccessfully on one of these nights. You're departing perhaps back to your carriage, and a figure steps out from the shadows of one of the buildings, cloaked and hooded, but raising a gloved hand up to you quietly. He gestures for you to follow.
She narrows her eyes to this individual and places her hand above the hilt of her sword before going close.
It looks like he's quietly stalking back to the maybe a shack or a storage building not too far from the inn. There's not much light back here. It's kind of in between buildings.
She will cautiously go along and try to keep an eye out for anything that could prove dangerous for her own well-being.
Alright. You follow cautiously down this kind of dark alleyway between this large storage shed and, we'll say, the stable barn. As I said, it's quite dark back here, but the figure stops at the dead end and turns. He lowers his hood. I apologize for the perhaps disturbing appearance. Cloaked figures in these nights cannot be trusted. However, I do know of no other way safely to approach you.
You speak of we. I assume you have allies nearby as well, correct?
In fact, I do not. I've come here alone. We were anticipating word from Judith.
So
I am Robert Dufour.
Ah, yes, the one we were initially investigating all those months back.
He nods a shadowed face. Yes, I should think. That is part of why I had seen you in the past. I saw the ring, and that is what I took to be certain. You are the envoy for the negotiations, then?
That I am.
We fear the worst for Judith. She was to stay here for the ongoing negotiations. When no word came back, and no sign of her, I asked about, approximately a week ago. There had been some movement. She was known in this town, despite her short stay. They saw her riding north, one of these gentlemen in the inn. And she did not return from the ride. And no one has seen her since.
Likely done by the same person who sent out the underlings to try to pressure the people at my house.
On the one hand, it is encouraging that if we have caused enough mischief for this group, then surely we are up to the right track, that they would go to such lengths. However, it is cold comfort with Judith gone. We know not if she has met the final end or not.
Do you know if any of your allies have investigated any potential scenes where this may have happened?
Several of us have gone to the grounds to the north, scouted about. We found broken javelins, an odd weapon in this part of the British Isle. Though not unheard of, we are not sure if this was part of some violence. We found no bodies or ash.
Judith is not the only one missing here.
He shifts uncertainly in the darkness.
There was a neonate we were using as an informant. I believe he was going by the name of Matthew.
Those of us who were here scouting detected no other traces of canines, nor have I, since I arrived. He has either met the final end, or moved on to safer pastures.
More intimidated into working for someone else.
Ellen is hopeful that, in spite of Judith being gone, there may be some hope for peace talks to continue. She intends to honor the word of postponing until August, the end of summer.
The princes are still deliberating. I am aware time runs short, but I have used what favor I could to try to convince one of the naysayers.
Think you it will be enough?
have not been around Ambrose nearly long enough to be able to tell how easily he can be convinced of something.
For the time being, I am Judith's replacement. I intend to keep a very discreet presence here. However, I will look for your ring in the future nights. I am hopeful that talks will continue.
And my remaining Gauntlet member is currently busy trying to convince one of the other naysayers, though I doubt he'll have much, success on that part.
Let us pray you are wrong. We among the anarchs are quite convinced of the threat that Basileus poses. We hope for it to be addressed post haste.
Yes, I am aware of his threat. I am also aware that one of his underlings killed one of my coterie members. Did who knows what with another one? Because I am absolutely certain that he had to have some type of hand in this.
I do not doubt your own resolve in seeing them quelled and crushed. I would not tarry here, nor would I openly show your face, unless you have guard. The major cities, we suspect, are heavily watched. It is unclear the extent of their surveillance, but even if Birmingham has been compromised, there is no telling the end of this Basileus and his ability to survey. Raise your hood whenever possible. Go with guard whenever possible. Do not go anywhere alone.
Sorry, what was that? I had a minor internet hiccup.
He said, do not go anywhere alone.
I will certainly keep that in mind. But first, I need to ride north and find if there's anything I can discern from the potential site of attack.
My lady, I would advise against it. You are the Gauntlet Lord, after all. Surely your status is sufficient that you could send others to do these things, rather than risk yourself on the road, unnecessarily.
Sending others would mean riding elsewhere, and wasting more time.
I doubt there is much more to gain upon the hills and forests to the north. Our scouts have been through it. You may try if you wish, though I advise against it.
I have ways of avoiding notice.
Let us pray that their ability to enhance the notice is not superior.
If I just sat about and worried about every potential situation, I'd hardly get anything done.
Perhaps another time we may debate that. In any case, we should not tarry here, nor any one place too long. As I said, raise your cloak, go with guard, avoid unnecessary risk, be discreet. I would caution your companion to do the same.
I shall, should I see them.
And should you bring word of the Council's decision for armistice, return and I will find you.
I shall.
And he raises his cloak, his hood, and nods to you, and then drawing his cloak more tightly about him, he continues on past you, back into the street, kind of looking around, and then disappearing around a corner.
She will put her hood up as well and use that first thought of intimidation to help manipulate the shadows around herself. Help cloak herself as she's traveling.
Alright. What else are Elined's plans now?
She intends to try to investigate the scene as discreetly as she can. From there, she intends to return and see how matters are going.
Alright. Unless you'd like to open the scene, I'll probably broad strokes your investigation. So you are riding north into the wilds, north of Birmingham, and looking for what?
Any sign of potential conflict, as he described as a potential site where the incident with Judith may have happened.
Does Elined actually have ride herself?
No, she does not.
Alright. Are you carriaging up there then?
Probably, yes.
Okay, that's gonna slow things down considerably. Trying to track by carriage is awkward at best. I will let you try. Me a perception survival difficulty 9. You don't really know what you're looking for, where it might be, and you're going by carriage at night. Without any help that I understand. Except perhaps the carriage driver. Who doesn't really know what you're doing, but you have money to pay, so he's going with it.
And detail oriented.
Wow. 2 successes on difficulty 9. Okay. You're not really sure what you're looking for, and you're getting discouraged as you spend a couple hours riding north, and then you cross a bridge over quite an active river. And as you come to the other side of it, your eye catches an odd angle, something unnatural. You see something pierced into the ground, and upon investigation, you find what looks like an intact spear, maybe a javelin. It's almost 4 feet in length, but you wouldn't have noticed it so well unless you were at the angle coming down and looking at it just when you were. Otherwise, it blends into the grass quite well. It's mostly intact, too. And there's just a shade of, it looks like a faint hue of old brown, maybe red. By the moonlight, it's hard to tell. By the lantern light, it could be blood. Some conflict happened here, certainly, and with unusual weapons.
Are there any tracks that lead off from that direction?
With 2 successes, I will say that when you start to look for tracks, you definitely see multiple horse footprints off the beaten trail, kind of all over the place, as they were all riding around. But they don't go into the wilderness. It seems like it returns to the road afterwards.
Tracking her down following those would probably be a mistake. If anything, she just has more to report back once she returns to London.
Hard to say what happened here. Certainly some kind of violence. Obviously, riders of some kind, javelins were thrown, and then it ended. There's no bodies, there's no ash, there's nothing else. That you can tell right now, at least.
Well, she was able to see that there was a conflict and where the tracks went. She intends to return to the village and try to make arrangements for travel back to London.
Alright. Easy enough to do. You return to Birmingham and get your belongings together from the local inn and set off back to London. So again, that's about 110 miles, so yeah, this is going to put you right at the beginning of July when you return to London. And you're reporting back immediately to Mordecai?
Of the information she's had, yes.
Alright. So you can correct me at any time during this, you tell Mordecai you went to go and parlay with the anarchs, with Judith, and it seemed that Judith was missing. Foul play is suspected, but no body was found, and Robert Dufour now seems to be their envoy. That the terms still stand. They're waiting to the end of summer to get a response. And You did find a scene of some violence. Maybe it was brigands or mercenaries. Maybe it was some farmer. Maybe it was Judith. Not sure. But that's where things stand. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mordecai is fairly grim at the news that Judith may have been slain. It's difficult to tell precisely where that emotion comes from, but he's definitely much more dour after that. And by this point, it's been a few weeks since you were in Lincoln. He does tell you with some increased levity, in spite of the news, that Ambrose seems to have changed his mind, that he's calling for a council. Something happened and he wishes to reconvene the Covenant Council to discuss peace with the anarchs, as there may be enough votes to change the outcome now. And by the time you arrive, the meeting is expected probably to happen within a week. And so Ambrose will be leaving very soon.
Is this meeting intended for princes only?
Gauntlet Lords are allowed to attend Covenant Council meetings, unless explicitly specified otherwise, but...
That is what I was trying to figure out, as if it was explicitly specified.
No.
Okay. Then she will likely want to attend that as well. That way, once she gets the answer, she can ride north once again for the said... to deliver said answer to the anarchs.
Alright. So you will be departing London. Make a note of this. It's currently early July for you. You'll be leaving London early mid-July to attend the next Covenant Council meeting. And plan on going up north from there. Hopefully to deliver news of peace.
Hopefully.
Or at least truce. Alright. That is good to know. Meanwhile, Nicholas, I think you are still only in mid-June. And the two of you and Cornelius, that is, were departing for Canterbury to entreat Octavia once more. Is that correct?
Can you hear me?
Oof, barely.
Damn it. How about now?
I mean, I can... You just sound like you're on a little microphone or something, but I can hear you.
I wish I could figure out why I was doing this.
Well, it's not unplayable.
Well then, yes, that's correct.
Okay. We will transition as we follow Cornelius and Nicholas back to Canterbury. And I'm going to need another willpower roll from you, difficulty 7, to withstand the aura, the burden of being in a city this holy, so filled with righteous, many churches, well attended, the cathedral itself, which just gives this palpable aura of guilt. 0 successes. Alright. So you're going to be at -1 die for now, as the distracting guilt and discomfort is it's really difficult to concentrate on anything with the city. At least it is right now. You can tell that it seems like Cornelius faces similar difficulty as the two of you kind of shift and writhe slightly in your seats in the carriage, passing through the gates. It doesn't take many nights of getting reacquainted, and Cornelius having a manor here simplifies things greatly for havening, at least. It also makes feeding slightly easier. Not entirely scot-free, but at least you have a place to stay. You intend to go straight to the prince to inquire?
If that is what he would like to do.
Cornelius has no desire to be in the city any longer than he has to be.
Then away we go.
Alright. As before, you make your way into this hospital. It's a very large stone building that's very high, arched walls and passageways. And fortunately, one of the sisters is available to help you find your way back through this kind of labyrinthine hallway back to the asylum, where you are greeted at first by Sister... oh, let's see. I want to say June. Yes, it is Sister June. Briefly, before Octavia is summoned. At length, you eventually find or hear the small steps of a child walking down this spiral staircase from this very long tower of this asylum, and see the child prince, Octavia, standing there in her small black dress and her strange short white locks of hair. You return so soon.
I do, and I bring along a guest.
I know this one. Cornelius. You stood at the side of your master. Cornelius just shifts uncomfortably in his feet, finding it difficult to meet her eyes. You are both waylaid by guilt. Your impurity distracts you.
I should think that it is other sense of my impurity that distracts me.
What purpose do you come here?
A vexing enigma.
She looks from Cornelius and then back to you with her wide, chilling blue eyes. An enigma.
We seek proof that the worshipful company of Mercer seeks to continue this war between the Covenant and the Anarchs. But they possess a magic I cannot decipher.
Describe to me this magic you speak of.
I will do one better, my liege. I will show you. And he'll gesture for Cornelius to bring out the document.
And Cornelius takes a few moments to realize that you're gesturing to him before looking up and withdraws from his jacket the envelope containing this letter. And he actually hands it to you instead of handing it to her directly.
He nods his thanks and then will hand the letter over to her.
Octavia reaches up and picks it, opening it with ginger little hands, and looking it over with wide eyes and interest. Her face turns here and there.
He'll let her look it over for a while to see if she sees what he sees.
You watch, and you do see a change in her expression from interest to perplexity. I have seen ciphers such as this in the past.
Have you any idea how to unlock it?
With some time, yes. But this is a trick of the priors. Though one not known very widely.
Of the priors, you say?
She nods, still looking at the paper.
That it is not known widely will be some help in our investigation.
I imagine many priors would know nothing of this. The eldest, however. And her eyes go up from the cypher to you.
I can only hope you're thinking what I'm thinking.
The evidence is damning. I cannot promise miracles, but I may yet glean a truth from this to aid you.
To aid us all, if it is what we think it is.
She nods, walking away, holding the parcel up in front of her. If it were a plain child, you would be certain they'd trip or fall with this paper in front of them and walking. But she continues, without any more acknowledgement of you, back up her tower, never taking her eyes off of it.
Nicholas turns back to Cornelius as if that's it, and he says, "Now all we can do is wait."
I do not care for that. Leaving this in the hands of another. I feel helpless.
It is not because the prince shares my blood, but for other reasons, that I think her loyalty is unwavering. She will help us get to the bottom of this.
As you say. Let us be rid of this place. I think myself even more uncomfortable here.
If you stay much longer, you will be, he says cryptically, but is content to leave.
He gawks a bit as he looks up the spiral staircase and the occasional face that looks down. And he follows you out. So you have at least a few nights, you think, in this burdensome city. Is there anything else that Nicholas means to get up to, or does he just wait to see what Octavia will uncover?
He has nothing else he really needs to do here that he didn't do the last time he was here. So waiting is on his agenda.
Alright. It is a few nights before you return and find that Octavia is unable to immediately pierce this cipher. However, she does help you significantly in understanding the pattern and speaks more to you than to Cornelius, explaining the patterns within patterns that, although initially seemingly random, the change in this code can be predicted with enough study and in thinking about it in a different way than you had. Give me an intelligence enigmas roll, standard difficulty. Alright, 2 successes at least. So that was basically her educating you, her teaching you to understand how to look at this puzzle in a new way. And after she has this lesson, this tutorial, it's almost exciting to you, this discovery, this way that you could approach deciphering the letter. And you feel that you are more equipped to try this again. That even if it changes, you can change with it and the message won't be lost.
He is quite excited, even though Cornelius probably doesn't know what's going on.
Cornelius is thoroughly lost. He seems to be looking between the two of you and definitely a few steps behind. It seems as though he understands maybe the basic idea of it, but nowhere near to the level that you do.
Thank you, my prince. I shall alert you post-haste to anything I discover.
I hope this has been educational, and in this lesson, perhaps you will learn to trust the voices you hear the next time you hear them. She smiles.
Nicholas is actually struck dumb by that statement. All he can do is purse his lips. I will do my best.
And with that, she leaves you, departing again.
This was the right decision, Cornelius. She has opened my eyes.
If you claim so, I am still very skeptical of her intent or her nature.
Give me some time and I'll make a believer out of you.
Of her potency, of her insight, I have no doubt. That is why I suggested that it seems more daunting to be in her presence than it was at my master's side. Perhaps it is the city. It finds me a new way.
That is why she lives here.
Perhaps it does have a natural defensive. This weight. I wish to rage against it. And yet I feel feeble. I know not how she managed to harness such a thing.
Long experience and incredible insight. Our little thralls did not fare so well. I'm sure you saw them looking down at you from above.
Yes. Well, if great insight and age leads me to become something like Octavia, I think I should not want to become that insightful ever.
You share the bloodline of Jean-Marc, do you not?
I do?
I'm afraid the insight is in it. Perhaps not the penchant for hidden secrets, but certainly the vision.
He seems to shudder slightly. Let us quit this place. If you have what you need to continue.
I wouldn't want to stay another night.
He nods and leads the two of you out of the hospital. And soon enough, you are back to his manor. Unless you mean to leave to somewhere else. What are Nicholas's plans now?
Nicholas is happy to return with Cornelius.
Ironically, since he has a manor here in Canterbury, this is more his home than anywhere. But obviously he does not want to spend more time here. And it sounds like he hopes to make progress on this cypher, but perhaps not here, and he thinks of returning to either London or Lincoln.
Nicholas would suggest London. He serves the best chance of running into the rest of the gauntlet there.
London it is.
But he will warn Cornelius that his focus might alarm him. That he may not be available for several nights while he pores over this manuscript.
He voices understanding and seems eager to leave Canterbury or return to London. Soon you depart. Okay. So it won't take you very long to get to London. And as I recall, Elined has a manor there which you can stay at. Did I make that up on the spot, or is that still history?
That's still there, yeah.
Okay.
With her ghoul there, no less.
Yes, watching over the place, making sure it doesn't get ransacked. So you begin your study with renewed purpose. I'm going to need an intelligence enigmas roll. Let me see here. I'll take an intelligence investigation roll. Your difficulty is now standard. You will need 20 successes. However, you cannot stop. Once you begin.
Yeah. He sort of knew that in his heart of hearts. Alright. Do you want me to just keep rolling until I botch or something else happens?
Yes. So what's going to happen is I'm going to give you a roll per night, and I will have you spend a willpower to work through the day as you work tirelessly to defeat the cypher, not allowing it to ever get too far ahead of you or lose your progress. So you can keep rolling as long as you're spending willpower until you botch or until you hit 20 successes. So you may begin rolling. Remind me your specialty. Do you have a specialty here?
In intelligence, it's resourceful. I don't know if that really applies.
I'll give it to you. it does take a certain resourcefulness to stay on top of this. It's almost as if this thing is alive, like it's fighting you, like you're battling an active opponent. So I'll give you 3 successes on this first night. Alright, you're up to 6 successes. You're going into the second night now. You're left undisturbed.
Whoa.
You're up to 12 successes.
I think it's 13, because on the last one I got a 10 as well.
Oh yeah, 13 successes. You're now 3 nights. You have not slept or fed for 3 nights. How much hunger do you have? Or blood, I should say.
After subtracting those 3, I'm down to 7, so I'm not starving yet.
No, you're getting hungry. It's getting difficult and exhausting. But you are making progress.
Leads and everything else. Oh wait, that's not this game. Ha!
Alright, 16 successes. You're drawing close to completing it. How much willpower do you have left?
How many days have I stayed awake?
5.
Down to 1 willpower. However, that's 3 more successes.
What did I say before that?
So now I'm at 19.
Is that with the 10?
Yes, 19 with the 10.
Alright, you need 1 more success.
Going into the last night.
On your last willpower.
Wow.
Triumphantly, exhausted to your wits' end, you defeat the cypher. After 6 days and 6 nights, without feeding, without stopping, over 100 hours, writing and poring over this. Describe Nicholas in this.
Nicholas has exhausted every bit of his will working through this cipher, falling into a focus that most who are not of his bloodline would not understand. Failure is simply not an option. And so he writes and takes notes on every change that happens, comparing back to notes he's taken before, painstakingly dragging out letters and words from this manuscript, thwarting whatever malevolent prior wrote this. But by the end of it, there's blood leaking from his nose and from his eye, and he looks like a man defeated, absolutely without the will to live.
Indeed, you finish writing the last of this, the last word, and then you enter torpor for the night, unable to stand even another moment, your hands still clutching the quill. It's hours later that you awaken, and you look, surrounded by your notes and your feverish writings and this encryption, but you have the translation, you have the message. The message reads, and I quote, "The Spaniards have been dispatched to Birmingham. Once they've finished the Chamberlain whelp, dispatch them to Chester to remove Kindwolf, to ensure he no longer interferes. The good Magister has successfully brokered a deal to aim the anarchs at Durham, with the help of some Yorkist traitors. See that the Magister receives adequate funds for bribes that have been promised." It is signed Godric. But when you look at the inscription, it's signed Basileus.
Nicholas is too exhausted, or he might actually sob at the discovery. If only he could muster up the willpower to run to Cornelius, but he'll have to do with shuffling. There are few who would allow themselves to get as exhausted as he is now.
Alright. I'm going to give you back 2 willpower, given your nature and the tremendous success and confidence this instills in you. You are still extremely exhausted and will be for a long time. Nothing in your own life has taxed you like defeating this cypher has. But few things have been as challenging to overcome, and overcoming it rebuilds your confidence. The scene will fade on the sight of Nicholas looking over the message.
And his one thought as it fades to black, we must tell Ambrose immediately.
Alright. A little bit ahead of time in the south of England, we will see how Judith does in surviving her night. Now, Judith you arrive in Southampton by rowboat. What are your immediate intentions?
To feed and heal immediately.
Alright. How are you going about hunting? I'll remind you that you look like hell.
I was hoping to find a smithy with a home attached to it. I don't imagine most smiths are just going to wander away from their workplace for like a whole night. Most are going to sleep nearby.
Alright. And let's say you find one. How do you want to go about feeding?
She's going to play up that she was attacked. Complete with sobbing and acting forlorn.
Alright, give me a manipulation performance. Difficulty 6. It actually helps you look like hell right now.
I was going to say. Can I get persuasive on this?
I will give you that.
That's a total of 9 successes.
Wow.
I will never do that again.
Not only do you find a smithy willing to hear your story, he actually invites you into his home and insists that you sit down with him for supper. And it's actually when he pauses briefly, sitting beside you at his little table inside this cottage next to his smithy. He's sitting there and he brings his hands together to pray, and he closes his eyes, and you could not have an easier target to feed on.
Now the question is, how much do I take?
It is a question.
How much can I get away with and be fairly certain he'll live?
You're old enough to know that you could probably take about 3 points of blood from this man, and he'll be unconscious, but he's a sturdy man. He's robust. He's a smith. He's not terribly old. He'll probably live.
Is there signs of anyone else here? Or is it just him? An apprentice, a spouse, anything?
It does look like there is another bed in the corner. It looks like it's made. It's unclear who else that might be.
But there's only one place sitting.
Yeah, it looks like he's not expecting another person here for dinner. He got this up for you and him.
Okay. So yeah, she's gonna go ahead and max out on him. And take 3. She's not looking to take a life right now.
Alright. And you're not hungry enough at all. Call for a frenzy check right now. So you can take 3, and after that he's out cold, face down his plate of food.
And then she's going to see about finding some suitable clothes, something not torn to shreds.
It's all men's clothes in here, and it's all peasant wear.
It's perfectly fine.
Alright, so you've got some kind of baggy breeches that don't fit you, and apron, a worn kind of grayish white cotton shirt that has some stains in the armpits.
That'll serve just fine for her purposes.
Alright, you've also got some big boots, if you want those.
I imagine she still had her shoes on. She wasn't being stabbed in her feet.
No, you still have your shoes. Just want to complete the outfit.
Fair enough. What are the odds that there is a completed sword on hand, waiting for delivery?
Roll a 1d10.
This always goes so well for me.
Pure luck. There is not. You do find a hilt with unfinished metal. It's like in the middle of being forged, or maybe it was a failed project. It's not clear. If you had to make a crude, sharp weapon out of it, you could, but it's not a sword, not a proper sword.
How about just a wood axe?
There is a wood axe. There's kind of like a pile of wood leaned up against the back of his cottage, and you do find a wood axe back there.
Actually, that might be a little conspicuous. Hatchet for splitting kindling?
Yeah, there's like a basket of kindling inside by the hearth, and there is a little hatchet there.
That'll do. And she'll slide that into her belt.
What do you do with your old clothes?
She'll pitch them into the hearth.
Okay. Alright, you now look like a very ugly and dirty peasant with a hatchet. but some pretty decent riding boots.
What are the odds that he has some strong drink floating about?
Define strong.
Something a bit more stout than ale.
No, he's too poor. Ale is what they have for water here.
Well, then she'll fill a mug from his cask, pour it out next to him, and put the mug in his hand. Let him think he got drunk and passed out. And it was all just a bleary dream.
Alright, you set the scene for him. Then you depart.
And then she's going to go hunting for more plentiful fare.
Okay, so going back on the hunt.
Because at least now she doesn't look like she just got the hell beat out of her.
Did you heal any of your wounds?
I went ahead and healed up to, what was it? Injured.
Okay.
So she definitely looks like she's been in a bar fight, but she doesn't look like she was just attacked by 5 riders.
Yeah, the most problematic cut is the one at your neck, which looks like it maybe was deep, but maybe it's kind of scarring over.
Well, she'll adjust the collar of that shirt so that it's off the opposite shoulder, but hitched up against her neck over that wound.
Alright, that helps. It makes you look a little bit odd, but it hides the wound.
Maybe a little enticing, because she's definitely fishing.
Yeah, you with your sweat-stained, oversized shirt and breeches look like a very strange sight. Some people just think you're mad and they kind of pity you at the sight of you. Some of the more desperate men see your bare shoulder and do look interested.
Any of them seem to be my type, for lack of a better term.
Give me a perception investigation roll, difficulty 6. Wow, 4 successes? 5 successes?
4, I don't have a specialty there.
Okay. Yeah, you make your way into town, and you're just starting to get, some attention. It's quite late at night. After everything you've done, it's getting to be quite late. And you're passing by. You're not inside of the inn, but you can hear some of the people talking and coming out. And so, kind of on this wooden entrance, there's a few people standing and sitting by some barrels and just talking and passing the time. There's this very young man, 16, 17, and he's kind of leaning back with a mug of ale. You hear him kind of go on and on. Oh, you should have seen my master, Smith. What a crock. Lost his wife and now he's all where. Why won't God do anything good for me? I swear, I should find a new apprenticeship. This is a crock. A man just cries half the time, looking for a woman to replace his wife. Takes a long sip of his ale. Only reason I haven't left him is because I'm good at it.
The people around him seem to be of similar stock.
Hard to tell. It seemed like not a lot of people are paying attention to him anymore. Maybe he's too drunk. This kid seems to just be complaining to almost no one now.
I'm asking because Judith has still got some wounds to deal with and would kind of like to top up as much as she can. Getting a little greedy maybe, but...
This kid certainly seems like he's some kind of craftsman, or crafts apprentice at least.
Yeah. She'll prop herself up at the mouth of an alley and give him a come hither stare,
Alright,
and then blatantly gesture with one hand.
I'm gonna let your earlier performance check ride because it was so high, and this kid's pretty drunk. That's what I'm talking about. It's a lady for me. And he kind of drops his mug of ale and almost topples over, following you into the alley. He basically starts pawing at you, and you can do as you please.
Yeah, she'll go ahead and take 3 more from him. Finish healing.
Alright, easy enough to do. He is out cold, and you are much more buzzed than you were.
But not looking like I'm about to fall apart.
No.
She'll pat him on the chest. If he's got a hat on, she'll tip it over his eyes so he can sleep it off. And she'll go weave her way into the inn.
Alright. You leave the boy in this side of this inn, kind of heaped up onto himself, just looking like the drunken mess everyone left him to be. And the inn here is quite small. There's maybe a dozen people inside. It's, like I said, quite late, so a lot of people are filtering out. It seems like most people are finishing their drinks. The barkeep's asleep.
She will rap at the bar in front of the barkeep and inquire about a room.
What room?
Aye. Doesn't matter if it's not your best. I've nowhere else to stay this evening. She'll kind of curl a lip, almost as if to imply something.
You can see this man's barely awake. His eyes are fully bloodshot, and he's tilting back and forth. You think he must be quite inebriated himself. Sure, last door on the left.
Key.
He's kind of leaning against the bar, and you can hear something like a hand fumbling. He's not even looking. You can just tell he's feeling around. And then his hand kind of comes up and slams on the table with a key. And then he falls backwards.
She'll snatch up the key and look about. Does anyone here look like they're... Well, that's probably a difficult question to answer. She's looking for 2 things. One more victim, and someone who looks like he's wearing riding boots and/or has recently come off a horse.
Yeah, that last one's very specific.
Yeah.
First one, given your many years of feeding on craftsmen, I'm gonna say that you know the look of a Fletcher's hands when he passes by, and one of these men passes by, kind of saddles up next to you, looking over. It looks like Joseph's out again. He turns to you. You don't have to pay if he's out that cold. Free tonight. And he kind of reaches behind the counter and grabs a couple of coins. We do it all the time. You never know. And during this exchange, you kind of get a glimpse of his hands, and there's some of the telltale lines in them that you've seen Fletcher's have.
She'll run her fingertips over the back of his hand. Strong hands.
Yeah, manipulation subterfuge roll. I'll give you standard difficulty since you healed your wounds. Difficulties. Actually, I'm gonna give you difficulty 7 because the clothes you're wearing are disgusting, and not
Fair
at all.
enough. That's fair. I have specialties in both of those things. One of them definitely does not apply.
Oh, is that the roll? No, there it is.
No, that's the roll.
Okay, still 2 successes. He's about to turn with the coins he just stole, and then stops. Well, maybe not lucky night as well. Hey, doll, let's go to that room you didn't pay for.
She'll twirl the key, still looking around to see if there's a rider she can enlist, for lack of a better term.
I'm gonna say you don't see any riders right now.
No, it's late in the evening. She can at least sate some of her bloodlust for the time being and go pay for a messenger tomorrow.
Can do that. You did have your entire purse on you when you awoke on the ship.
Yep.
Alright. It's little is involved to get this man back to this room and to the bed, and as before, he's pretty quick to begin, so it's not difficult for you to feed as needed.
I think this one she'll actually let get started and then finish it off with a quick nip, so he can at least imagine that he finished.
Alright, so you want to pantomime having sex?
Not exactly.
Not
Let him
that
get his
far.
pants off. Let him get his pants off and get right there, and then
Yeah. Because that would require expenditure or
yep,
further.
which not exactly a thing she's in a position to do right now.
Okay. All the same, it helps to build his eagerness, and so, yes, you can feed from him as needed. How much do you take from him?
3 more.
Alright, once again, out cold on the bed. At least this one has a bed.
Yeah, but he's not staying in here. Because she's about to pass out and go into torpor and doesn't want to have him wake up to that. So she'll drag him into the hall and leave him in a heap, pants around his ankles. No. She's in a good mood. She'll go ahead and do him up properly. And then secure the night, or secure the room for the day as best she can.
Alright. You cover up the blinds on the windows and make a more secure kind of nest on the ground away from where all the light is anyway. Lock up the door, board it just in case. You feel as secure as this room in this little town is going to give you, which seems pretty sleepy anyway. And sure enough, you time it pretty well that dawn approaches shortly after, and you fall into torpor. And on that, the scene will fade. We will close the session, and we will pick it up again next week.